Hello and a very warm welcome into Raising the Dots, connecting you with the people, the ideas and the technology reshaping the world of Braille and tactile literacy. I'm Dave Williams and I'm delighted that you're able to join me here in Sao Paulo at the 11th General Assembly of the World Blind Union. Coming up this time on Raising the Dots, we'll be hearing about the new JAWS for Windows support for DotPad X. We'll also be hearing from visitors to the Singapore Association for the Visually Handicapped about their experience of using DotPad X for the very first time. And we'll be meeting a researcher from Australia studying the link between Braille and quality of life. That's all coming up this time on Raising the Dots. JAWS for Windows is the screen reading software used by many blind people around the world for accessing information and being more productive in the workplace, accessing content in education and being more independent at home. In September, JAWS for Windows introduced support for the DotPad X, and here to tell us more is Gary Redfern-Gray, who works in support for Dot. Welcome into Raising the Dots, Gary.
Hi, glad to be here.
All right, without any further ado, what's new?
Great news is that JAWS is now compatible with Multiline Braille. So if you have a DotPad X, which is a multi-line Braille display, it now means that you can get Multiline Braille integrated right across Windows with your screen reader.
And when did this become available?
This became available at the start of September. And so if you have the latest version of JAWS, then you have it right now.
All right. And who would you say this is for?
Well, as being a Braille user for many, many years, using single-line Braille displays, the benefit of multi-line Braille, I think, is for everybody. Everybody's going to benefit from having more Braille available to them.
Right, so students, professionals, people who use JAWS for Windows at home, anybody who's using Braille in JAWS, right?
Yes, I would say so. Braille is very important because it gives you all the detail immediately that speech doesn't give you. So to understand exactly what's there, you can tell, for example, if you've got two spaces in a row, your speech is not going to tell you that. So if you're a Braille user, having Braille in JAWS is fantastic, and having multi-line Braille is even better.
Right, and I'm sure we're going to be doing a deeper dive on this in future episodes of Raising the Dots, but just highlight, if you would, Gary, some of the benefits of having multi-line Braille support. Which problems does this solve?
Well, the immediate problem, I think, is a context problem. So if you're using a single-line Braille display, you're going to get a few words on the display, and then you're pressing the panning button, and those words are going to disappear, and you're going to get the next few words. When you use a DotPad, you're getting several lines of Braille, so you can get more context for whatever it is you're reading or working with. So I write code quite a lot of the time, and that's very useful to be able to have that code in a multi-line way on my DotPad, so I'm not having to pan a lot to find exactly what is written there. But if you're using, let's say, a web page, you're going to get a lot more context as you read the page, making it much more productive to understand what's there and work with it.
Right, and then there are also benefits for spreadsheets and tables.
Yes, and that's the other thing. So that if you are using tables, JAWS has a mode called cropped mode. And what that basically means is that when you are working with a spreadsheet, it will recognize that and show you what's in the current column. So rather than it reading across as if it was a regular text with paragraphs of text, it's going to recognize that you're in a column, and now you're going to get the heading of the column and the data in that column. And then when you pan across to the right, you're going to be able to see the data in the next column. So it gives you a lot more context rather than what we used to have, which is what's in the current cell. So any users of Excel or any people that work with tabular information, they've done that in the past, you can hopefully see the benefit of having a column's worth of information or several cells as opposed to one cell.
Well, I'm really excited to hear how people will be using this. But before they do, Gary, what do you have to do to get it going? How do you set this up? Can you just plug in your .pad X and JAWS will pick it up? Is there some steps that we need to do?
If you are a JAWS user, hopefully you will know that you can go in the JAWS window, you can go to the options menu and then go to Braille settings, and then you can choose your display in there. And if you have a .pad, you can choose .pad, add it as a Braille display, and you're away. One thing worth mentioning, though, if you are a Bluetooth, you want to connect the .pad with Bluetooth, please don't try and pair the .pad with your PC first. That is wholly handled by the JAWS Braille settings. So you simply go to Options, Braille settings, and you add the .pad, and then what you'll get is a Bluetooth scanner window, and you can choose the .pad from there, and it will connect directly.
Okay. Well, we'll give some contact details in a second if anybody's having any questions about that process. Why do you, Gary, think this is a significant development?
I think it's significant because Braille's been single line for very many years, and that's been great and been very welcome. But I think now we are changing. We're having multi-line Braille, enabling people to be more productive and have a better view of their information in Braille. I think it's great that that Vispero have embraced multi-line, and it's fantastic that the .pad X is also integrated.
There are bound to be lots of questions about this, Gary, particularly in the early days. Where can people learn more?
Okay, well, the first place you can learn more is from my website. You can go to the address pad.dotincorp, DOTINCORP.com to read more about .pad X. Or you can contact us at the email address info@dotincorp.com.
Gary Redfern-Gray, Technical Support Manager with Dot Inc. Thank you so much for joining us on Raising the Dots.
Thank you.
As part of the recent .pad X global tour, we visited Singapore and met with visitors to the Singapore Association of the Visually Handicapped, who shared some of their reactions getting hands-on with .pad X for the very first time. I am with Serene, who's been trying out the .pad X this morning. But Serene, just tell me about your Braille journey. When did you learn Braille?
I learned when I was about 16 years old. I only managed to learn the basic. I do not know contractions very well.
And did you have any access to tactile graphics or diagrams or anything like that?
I only come across like certain games that have tactiles, diagrams, and all that. I study. When I study, I did not use Braille at all.
Right.
So yeah.
And so, do you think it would have been useful to have more access to diagrams and Braille for studying?
Yes, definitely. It does help with if .pad works well with students. It will be very useful.
Yeah.
And also, I did ask you earlier on, says that whether is it able to display the charts of crochet or knitting, so it will help for those who are likes to do handicrafts.
That's a really interesting use case, handicrafts and crochet and knitting patterns. We should definitely look into trying to make some of that content for .pad. Mm-hmm. Just describe what you've been doing for the last hour, because you've been very enthusiastic.
Actually, in fact, Dave have introduced me some of the games on the .pad, so it's quite interesting. And I've been playing around with it and teaching some of my peers as well to let them try and let them play.
So just for anyone listening who's not experienced those games, can you just describe them?
Okay, the first one is something like Tetris. It's just have to figure out the missing shape that to fit into the rectangle. So that is pretty easy. You just need to make sure you know the 4 different shapes to fit into the space, and just press the corresponding buttons. Then the other one I tried was the look for W, the Braille dots for W. So it gets difficult. Instead of just showing one character, it may show you 3 characters in each row. So you have to figure out which column the W is, and you have to press it.
And was it easy?
The W one is if there are too many, like 3 characters at once in each position, you have to figure out which is the W. It can be the first, it can be the center, it can be the last one. So you have 4 columns, and if you have, each row you may have. I didn't count how many rows are there though. So you have to go through everything to make sure that you're at the correct column.
Obviously, those games are a lot of fun, but they reinforce important tactile skills.
Yes, it does.
Can you just explain a little bit more about that for somebody who maybe is new to using Braille or new to using tactile diagrams, why having those tactile games could really help them?
Partly also the games help you to train your fingers to be more sensitive, so that you're able to figure out what are you touching, and you're able to understand the diagram easily through the games as well. In Singapore, we have a common term that's called adult blind. So for them to have, especially their fingers are not that sensitive, this will help them to improve the sensitivity for their fingers.
And what would you say to somebody who's perhaps a little bit skeptical about the importance of tactile skills? Because we've got a lot of audio products now, a lot of audio solutions like screen readers, that obviously do text-to-speech output, and we've got talking books and podcasts like this one. Why is it so important, do you think, for us as blind people to keep up our tactile skills?
One day we'll get old, we may lose our sense of hearing. So if you depend everything on hearing and you do not know so-called basic Braille or even understand to feel tactile pictures, you may have difficulty once you lost your sense of hearing. So what are you going to do? So I think Braille is still definitely important, to learn, and also even learn how to touch tactile pictures.
And how important do you think products like DotPad X are for supporting that?
To me, I think it's quite important because it's able to reflect the diagram immediately, rather than all the while now we have to wait for the diagram to produce. It'll take some time to use the what do you call it, the thermoform paper to do the diagrams. So you need someone to able to do on the master copy, then you use the machine to photocopy out on the thermoform paper, and that's where you get the diagrams. So it takes time, whereas this is straightforward.
And it's dynamic as well,
yes,
because you can change it straight away, like,
yes,
I don't know, make the ears bigger or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you feel like when Jane was doing some of the finger drawing, she was drawing on the screen of the phone,
yes,
and it was coming up on the dot?
Yes. So that was interesting. And also happens that someone showed me the icon of WhatsApp and Facebook. We can't see, we don't know what does the icon looks like, because on our phone it's already been labeled. So we just hear, Facebook, we just double tap to go in. Never think that there is a icon to it, a picture to that app itself. So with this DotPad, I have a chance to feel it. Oh, okay, so Facebook is like this, WhatsApp is like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, Serene, thank you so much for coming along today and for being so enthusiastic about DotPad, and also helping out really in, like you said, teaching some of your peers how to use it and how to get the best from it, and also for being willing eventually to be persuaded to come and talk with the Raising the Dots podcast. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Dylan. My main profession, I'm a digital accessibility specialist at Equal Dreams. So I do quite a bit of course, accessibility work, right? And in the past, I used to be a freelance trainer to teach clients how to use their smartphone, their mobile phones, and yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I just graduated from a degree in computing science. Yeah, that's just a bit about me. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on graduating, and you didn't need any assistance really. You straight away connected your phone to the dot pad. So you found that experience. How was it?
It was pretty smooth. I thought that it would take a while initially. I kind of experimented with it a little bit before, and I did showcase to some of our clients before when we had a demo unit here at SABH.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with Braille. What's been your Braille journey?
Okay, so for me, growing up, I did use print, so not so much of Braille. Mm-hmm. I think I only started learning a little bit of Braille I only started learning a little bit of Braille when I was in primary 6. Mm-hmm. And that was just to ensure that if I do lose my vision, I get to know how to use Braille. Hence, my reading speed is not great, right? But on a day-to-day basis, I use Braille screen input to actually type out my...
Yeah, when you're writing on your phone, I use it a lot as well for text and WhatsApp and social media and so on. So, yeah, Braille screen input, very important. What's been your experience with access to tactile graphics?
Well, not as much.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't exposed to it a lot compared to a lot of my other peers growing up using Braille. Because for them, growing up using Braille, they have a lot of tactile diagrams, right? You know, we learn science, we learn math, right? So there are diagrams involved. I do have to draw diagrams using plastic sheets before, so that was my only experience with tactile. And over the years, I also have been trying to use a tactile way to show clients how to use their mobile phones, like how the layouts of certain things, because some of them may have lost their sight midway in their lives.
And do you think products like the DotPad X potentially could improve access to tactile graphics for people who maybe don't have access to hard copy?
I think if the diagrams are drawn in a more simplistic manner, it may be much easier for a person with total visual impairment to actually understand what the diagram is. So like, if the diagrams is too complex, I think, it may be a bit hard for them to tell the details from it. Right. So
that's a really good point, isn't it? That often, as blind people, we're given tactile diagrams, and sometimes they're just overwhelming.
Correct.
Because they're too complicated.
Correct. So I feel that the DotPad can actually bridge the gap if it actually can use different representations of, like if you can help to build a very nice tactile map, right? I mean when we come to talk about tactile maps, it takes time to build, right? And it takes time for us to also learn the legends, right? I think if the diagram can be formulated in a way that is simple, right? I think that will actually help the users kind of have a feel on how the sighted world is, right? They will be able to experience, like the Tetris game you were showing, right? I think that is one step to bridge that gap, allowing blind individuals like myself to kind of play games that our sighted friends does, right? That's always something we want to do.
Absolutely, and developing those tactile skills along with clearer tactile diagrams, we need both of those things.
Correct.
What do you think will the role of AI be in the future of tactile diagrams?
Wow, funny question you ask. I think that's something that I always look into, right? I mean, now we have generative AI, have everything to generate our images, right? I find it to be actually quite useful. I think if we can prompt the AI in such a way where it can kind of outline how a certain diagram looks or feel, right? And then get DotPad to actually draw it out, right? Other than just getting a description of it, we get to feel exactly and make our own description of things. So, the misconceptions of how we have alt text and image description, right? It's always dependent on how somebody writes it, the context and the view of somebody else. But what if we can supplement the alt text together with the image? So that means we can have both views, right? We can see the actual intent of the image, and we can actually experience the image like how, say, a sighted individual would. Right? So I feel that will actually bring down the digital barrier, right? It actually will close the gaps, allowing more persons with visual impairment to have access with these materials that we used to kind of avoid, right? Images.
Yep.
We don't want to. We don't want to waste our time on it, right? Yeah.
And then maybe in the built environment as well, there's perhaps a conversation to be had about access to graphical information. Some places have Braille labels, for example. In a lift, in a building, often you get Braille labels on the buttons, but increasingly the world is covered in screens showing lots of graphical information, right? And we need access to that information. And I noticed coming into Changi Airport yesterday, they don't have announcements anymore in the airport.
It's not so much in Singapore, I think. I think it's moving a little bit slower here compared to... Sorry, where are you from?
I'm from the UK.
Compared to the UK. I think I went to Glasgow for my exchange and I found kind of a very big difference. Like, I think people in the UK or citizens in the UK, they tend to be more understanding, or in the sense they know how to guide us. I think maybe because they have access to this information. Not saying that people in Singapore don't, right? It's just a different context, I think.
Yeah. Everyone's been super lovely. I mean, I haven't had any problems.
That's good. Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah. Well, Dalen, look, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time to speak with us on Raising the Dots.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Arsha Rose is a PhD candidate, casual marker and teacher from the University of Southern Queensland and has an active interest in the area of Braille literacy. And Arsha joins us now. Welcome in, Arsha. I hope I got that right. It says here you're a casual marker and a casual teacher. We'll talk about your PhD in just a second. Tell us how you came to work in the area of Braille and tactile literacy.
Yeah, sure. So I've worked, and thanks for having me on the program today. I've worked as a teacher in the field of blindness, low vision for 20 odd years now, working with lots of young people, children and adolescents with blindness, low vision. Moved into a PhD at the beginning of 2024, and part of that role at the University of Southern Queensland is then to be offered some casual marking of teaching students' work and jumping in to do some teaching at the university as well. So sort of, I guess, a sideways step from working with children and adolescents to working with young adults or adults who are then wanting to be teachers.
Right, and you're not blind yourself, but what kind of attracted you to working in this field?
Well, many years ago, my mum was working in the field and I just enjoyed work. She was working with children and I just enjoyed working with the children as well. So I think I was probably 13 when I thought, yes, I want to be a teacher and I'd like to work with people with disability. And where I live in Australia, Adelaide, down in South Australia, it's quite small, and we often joke it's about 3 degrees of separation, so everybody knows everybody. So when I finished my teaching degree, somebody said to me, "Oh, I know the deputy principal at the School for the Blind. You should apply there." Well, as I said, that was 20 odd years ago, and I've never looked back, really.
Let's talk about the subject of your PhD. You're researching links between Braille literacy and quality of life, is that right?
That is correct. And I guess it came from a place of curiosity, a place of wondering. As I said, I've worked in the field as a teacher for many years. I've taught lots of young people. I've taught lots of Braille, and I've wondered what happens to those young people once they leave the education system. And what we do know in Australia through Vision Australia, what we know in the UK through work done by RNIB, what we know in America is that employment rates are at about 25%. So employment rates are low, but that's all we measure, and that's not all quality of life is. So are we measuring, are people happy? Are they content? Are they physically well? Are they emotionally well? We're not measuring that. And so my wonderings turned into I wonder if I could try to measure this and find something out.
Right. And do you have a null hypothesis? Those of us who use Braille and tactile literacy would probably say that those things contribute very much to our quality of life. Are you going to this with an open mind, or are you expecting to find that Braille and tactile literacy does support a quality of life?
We certainly know, and the evidence is there, that if somebody who is sighted has higher levels of print literacy, they are likely to have higher quality of life. So the evidence is there. That has been measured over and over again. We know that. So I guess my hypothesis comes from, well, if we know that in print, can we show that in Braille? So if a person has higher Braille literacy skills, do they have higher quality of life? 18 months into my PhD, I certainly haven't answered my hypothesis yet, but I hope to figure out the barriers and challenges, the commonalities, the good things, the positives, all of those things that lead to quality of life that then give us some overall answers.
Okay, and just define for us, if you would, Asha, what do you mean by quality of life? We'll have a sense of what we think that means, but in terms of your research, how are you defining quality of life?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think quality of life is happiness and joyfulness and your overall, as I said before, your overall physical health. Are you capable of doing the things in your community that you want to do? Are you happy doing those things? Is there something more that you want in life? Are you getting all of your needs met? So I guess it's more than just, are you working? Do you own a house? Are you married? Do you have children? Because for some people, that is not a measure of quality of life. But what perhaps is a measure of quality of life is all of the intrinsic things that make that person's life what they want it to be. So we will certainly be looking at measures that are appropriate to this cohort of people and that have a more holistic view of quality of life. As I say, for some people, working full time is not a measure of their quality of life.
And in your reading, what have you found? Can you describe any related research? Has anyone tried to study this previously?
People have measured parts of it. So there were studies done back in the 90s to academics who have actually been cited quite a lot in saying that people who use Braille are more likely to be employed. So that was, there's a slight link there to outcomes, I guess, life outcomes rather than quality of life. Interestingly, though, Braille use, Braille proficiency, Braille literacy wasn't measured. It was just, if you use Braille, you're more likely to be employed. So I guess I'm looking a little bit more deeply at how do you use Braille? When do you use Braille? How often do you use Braille? What is your speed and comprehension? So those sort of nitty-gritties of Braille I'm looking at in terms of then Braille literacy and quality of life.
Can you describe your current research project then? What's the approach that you're taking? What methods are you using to conduct this research?
Yeah, so it'll end up being cross-sectional surveys and interviews. So what we first looked for was a way to measure adult Braille literacy. So again, we looked through the literature to see what other people had done, and other people had measured components. So I guess taking off from the higher print literacy equals higher quality of life, I guess, hypothesis or foundation, we've gone with that. So does higher Braille literacy mean higher quality of life? So we've needed to measure Braille literacy. So we've gone to the global experts and said, okay, there's nothing in the literature. There's not a measure of Braille literacy. So we went to the global experts via interview and asked them what they would consider to be Braille literacy measures. What do we need to measure, first of all? And the experts came up with 9 components, and they were things like reading rate, reading comprehension, errors in reading, and then writing. So spelling, use of contractions, use of punctuation, So what we did was we came up with a tool, a Braille literacy tool that measured those 9 components. And we took those, well, at the moment, we're taking those to the experts, the Braille experts, and we're saying, okay, we want you to do this test. It's like sitting in a classroom again with a teacher, but it's for adults. We want you to do this test, and we're going to measure all of those components. And then we're going to ask you to do an online survey. So what we want is to develop a proxy, because ultimately what I want out of this PhD is high numbers of participants. I want to be able to say that we went far and wide and we measured lots and lots and lots of people who are Braille users, and this is what we found. Because I think that's going to be more compelling and hopefully lead to potential change around the education of students. You know, when they may or may not need Braille, we can take that to them and say, here's the outcomes. This is what we know. This is what children need to be expert Braille users in their adulthood, and this is what it means for them.
Right. So are you mapping those literacy rates against the your quality of life indicators, or are you comparing that group with a non-Braille reading group?
It's a great question, and I'm sorry I probably delved too far forward then. So take it back a step. What we're looking to do is to compare the Braille literacy rates in a teacher-assessed assessment to Braille literacy in a proxy survey. So we'll then ask that person, how do you measure your Braille literacy or Braille proficiency skills? And we're going to look at those and make sure that they compare. The next step, so study 3, which will hopefully start to occur later this year, and this is where we'll be looking for participants, will be the proxy survey against a quality of life survey, and we'll be looking at those on an individual basis. And then we'll be asking people if they'd like to be interviewed. So we might come up with some really interesting individual data where, that person has very high Braille literacy skills, self-measured, but considers themselves on a measure to have quite low quality of life. What's going on there? What can we then interview that person and ask them? So that's where the qualitative study comes in. Can we ask them, what were the barriers? What are the challenges? What are the things that are working? What isn't working? And vice versa. Do we have people with low Braille literacy skills, very high quality of life? What's happening there? So I guess that's where the hypothesis starts to come in around why? That's the question then. Why are we seeing differences?
You're still looking for participants. How many participants are you hoping to speak with? And anyone listening, how can they get involved?
Yes, thank you for asking that. Look, if someone is over 18 years of age and uses Braille, and I'm not just looking for expert Braillists, I'm looking for people who only use Braille to label the food in their freezer, or only use Braille because they need it for their medicine packets. I'm looking for anybody who is over 18 who uses some form of Braille because it's helpful to them. And look, probably best way to get in touch is via email. And I apologise, my first name is tricky because it's got 2 A's at the front. So it's aasha.rose, R-O-S-E, at unisq.edu.au. And I'm sure you'll put that in the notes anyway, Dave.
Absolutely, we certainly will do.
But yes, certainly looking for participants at the moment to assist in developing and validating, making reliable that Braille literacy assessment, and then looking for participants around doing the Braille literacy assessment against the quality of life survey. So yes, ongoing looking for participants for the next few months.
For anyone interested in keeping across Braille research in general, do you have any recommended reading? Is there anywhere we can go to learn more? Yes,
I mean, there are wonderful academic journals like the British Journal of Vision Impairment and the latest Journal of South Pacific Educators of Vision Impairment. So that is more localised to where I live. in the South Pacific. That is just, so the 17th journal has just been published, and that would be available via the SPEVI. We love a good acronym, SPEVI website. And in fact, the paper I published around looking for the Braille literacy assessments is in the current journal. The other one that's really nice is the International Council of Educators for Vision Impairment, ICVI or ICVI journal. That journal's called The Educator, and that's a lovely journal that's very specific to blindness, low vision as well. And I have to say, having spent now 6 weeks in and around Europe, your European Union is quite exceptional in terms of the projects that it is supporting for people with blindness, low vision. I've been really, really impressed. I've had a wonderful time in Europe, in the UK, a wonderful experience meeting lots of people. And I'm sure on individual levels, not everything's perfect, but I do think that there's lots of ideas that I can take home to Australia. And the biggest one for me is Braille on medicine packets, which we don't have yet in Australia. And yet people that I've spoken to have said it is part of what allows them to have autonomy and independence. So I'm going to try and work out how we get that in Australia. So thanks to everyone in the UK that I've spoken to so far.
Yeah, I know from my own personal experience, my wife has, she won't mind me saying, many medications, and having Braille on the boxes is invaluable. You were at the ICVI conference and tactile reading that took place in the summer of 2025. Any big takeaways from either of those conferences for you?
I think what made me feel very proud of our field is people's passion for keeping Braille alive. You know, there's been a conversation that has gone on for many years that things like audio and technology can take over, and that Braille's had its day. I think that what was reaffirming for me and probably validating of the work I'm doing in my PhD is that teachers, researchers and Braille users themselves do not believe that. They certainly believe, and when you're in a room of hundreds and hundreds of people all saying the same thing, it's sort of goosebump on skin stuff. It's heartwarming stuff where people are saying, regardless of whether you use some Braille and audio and technology, Braille is still an important life choice in that. And I guess for me as a teacher, I would often say, so if we only give a sighted child a pencil and say, there we go, do 13 years of schoolwork with a pencil, well, we just wouldn't do that. And so we give them a laptop and we give them an iPad and we give them a calculator and we give them a pen and we give them choice. We give them tools in their toolbox. And I've always thought of Braille like that. To go back to your question, it's reaffirming that that's not just little old me sitting in little old Adelaide believing that, but I can see now that globally, people believe that Braille is a choice for people who can't or have trouble accessing print, and that's really reaffirming that we're all on the same page, walking the same track on this one, and there's lots of really great research that's backing that as well, which is wonderful.
Asha Rose, teacher and PhD candidate from the University of South Queensland. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Well, that's it for this time on Raising the Dots. Thank you very much for your company, and thank you to everybody who's come along to visit with us in Sao Paulo at the 11th General Assembly of the World Blind Union. I've been Dave Williams, and until next time, bye for now.